Here we stand just before Shavuos, Man Matan Torah Seinu. Torah, Maral brings the Zohar, Torah Miloshin Hara'ah. Torah is the guide to life. Torah is not just a matter of involving oneself, immersing oneself in some theoretical academic study. Torah is the study of life, of reality as it is. The description that the Borei Olam, the Creator Himself, has given us of every element that He created and every situation that He makes happen. Just how to deal with it, the correct way of dealing with it, the correct attitude, the wise way of living, the way of life as Hashem sees it. And we of all people, Asher ba charbanu mikol ha'amim, we of all people on the earth were given this commandment to learn it. And of course, all Taryag mitzvahs to live them. V'shinan tom livanecha, impart wisdom. Livanecha, vanecha elu atalmidim, a mitzvah al kol chacham v'chacham, to teach. What is it that has to be taught? Shiu divrei Torah mechudodim beficha, v'shinantam, clarity, knowledge. So first and foremost, we have to recognize that what we're learning is once again not just something theoretical. There's an attitude that we're picking up in everything we learn. And certainly, when one learns halacha l'maaseh, it's obvious what attitudes he's picking up to live correctly. Exactly how to live one's life, how to be mekayim, the Ratzon Hashem, the mitzvahs of Hashem. And of course, v'shinantam, learning Torah for the sake of knowing Torah. It's not just the experience, beautiful as it is. There's no greater tainug. There's nothing more pleasurable than being misamek, than using every bit of brain power you've got in trying to understand the sugya, trying to understand the message, the underlying message of whatever sugya it is that you're learning. Oh, the tainug of the beauty of the svara, of course. But at the end of the day, one has to take responsibility for knowing, learning to know. A Talmid Chacham, as defined by Chazal, is one who knows Kol HaTorah Kula. It's not defined by how big a lamdan he is. Although, of course, if his knowledge of Kol HaTorah Kula is totally superficial, then his knowledge of Kol HaTorah is lacking. But it's knowledge of Torah. It's as you're misamek. Remember it, chazer it, walk around with it, carry your Torah. Talmudoi biyodoi. Dirshu has, of course, been machadish that forgotten ikar of Torah, which is to retain the information, to remember what you learn, to make an effort to remember what you learn. Where, of course, Gedolei Yisrael are famous for walking around with Kol HaTorah Kula, understanding that it's the achrayus of every one of us to know, to remember, to chazer, and to know with clarity. And the second, to understand that Torah is l'maaseh. So of course, making sure that there's a focus on halacha as well, not only sees to it that we learn halacha, that we know our achayim, that we know what to do every day, that we know our tzitzis and our tefillin and so on, and that we know Hilchos Shabbos, we know Hilchos Yontif, we know Hilchos Pesach. Not only that, but it definitely sets an attitude within us. We remember that Torah is l'maaseh, and then that filters back to all of our learning, and it doesn't make a difference what someone is learning. He's got to know this is for real. And when you say a svara, you've got to believe in it in a way that you would paskin that way. And when you walk away from a sugya, you have to be holding it in your hand, learning, knowing This is what I have to know, what I have to be able to live, what I have to be able to put into practice. This particular time, we're beginning the Seder in the Sefer Chafetz Chaim. The Sefer Chafetz Chaim is something that I've always seen, something that Klal Yisrael has to be so proud of. The Rebbeinu Shem sold us Torah. He comes to Klal Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu was told to bring Torah to Klal Yisrael and give us a choice, do we want it or not. So Hashem tells us he tells him precisely how to present it to Klal Yisrael. Eila Dvarim, Rashi says, Lo poches v'lo yoser. This is precisely what you are to tell them. What are you to tell them? He's offering them skula mikol amin. Mamleches kohenim v'goy kodesh. I'm giving you the choice. I'm giving you the opportunity. The opportunity for what? The opportunity to be elevated. A special people close to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Mamleches kohenim v'goy kodesh. Elevated, refined, big. If there's any sefer we possess that communicates that, it's a Sefer Chafetz Chaim. I feel this all the time. There has never been a nation on the face of this earth that has a Sefer 19 prokim long telling you what you're allowed to talk about. You know, there's the issue of libel that most progressive countries outlaw. In Israel, they even call it chok lishon hara. What is that? You can't slander somebody. They accept that there's something wrong with slander. You make a false accusation. That's something that's criminal. That something can be prosecuted, or at least civil. You can be prosecuted. Someone can bring a claim against you. For Klal Yisrael, Lashon Hara is not a matter of slander and not a matter of libel. Lashon Hara is simply focusing on negativity. Talking about the gnus of another Yid. Saying something negative about your brother. That in itself is beneath us. That in itself the Torah portrays as Loiselech rochil bi'amecha. Don't walk around like a traveling salesman among your people. A traveling salesman, the town crier, who's got the latest information about what's doing, and this one's garbage and that one's garbage. The negativity, just expressing negativity, communicating negativity about another person, that's beneath us. The Torah portrays the rochil, the personality of that one that goes around from town to town, spreading negativity about others. The Torah is sort of poking fun at him and telling us, don't be a rochil. It's a borrowed word, the word rochil. Rochel is a peddler. Rochil is not to walk around in a peddler-like manner, where what you're doing is selling the latest negative information about others. The Torah says we're bigger than that. We're bigger than that. 19 prokim of halachis, of what you can discuss over breakfast, of what you can talk about with your friend. And even when there's a need to go and convey negative information, there's a need for it for some constructive purpose. 7 tnoim, conditions, with all the details. The Chafetz Chaim has put together a sefer that portrays the godless of Klal Yisrael. Learning the halachis of Lashon Hara. Learning the halachas, of course, the first thing is it's like learning all halacha. You don't know what to do if you don't learn Hilchas Tzitzis. You don't know what to wear. You don't know how to make tzitzis, when you're chayim, when you're pater, when you make a bracha, and what you can wear on Shabbos. Hilchas Tefillin. Chalila, you don't get it right, you can be making brachas levatol every morning. Lashon Hara, if you don't know the halachas, like the Chafetz Chaim said, this sefer allows us to open our mouths, because without it we don't know what we're allowed to say. But even more, it is a sefer that has us appreciate the greatness of being a Yid. The greatness of being a Yid. We know how to speak in Lashon Nakiya, which doesn't mean being politically correct. It means we learn to focus on the positive and not the negative. We learn to see to it that all of our speech is constructive. And the Chavetz Chaim includes in his Sefer, in his Psicha, the guidelines, the mitzvahs, bein Adam lachaveroi, where he goes in through the lavin and the essen. The Chavetz Chaim opens for us mitzvahs that are sosum, that are barely mentioned. He had to go and collect from the works of the Rishonim to give us guidelines of mitzvahs bein Adam lachaveroi that are not really collected anywhere else. This Sefer is so elevating. Aside from being informative, it is so elevating. It makes us so big. This is what it means to be Mamleches Kohanim v'Goy Kodesh. This is why Klal Yisrael said Na'aseh v'Nishma. This is what we wanted to become. So you're embarking upon the learning of the Sefer Chavetz Chaim, learning to know, learning to understand, learning to appreciate, and learning to become bigger. It's like everything else you're learning. Of course, if you're learning in a way that you're responsible for it, that means you've got to go and write it on your heart. Saluach libeichem. Im Yirtzeh Hashem, all of this Torah should stick to all of us forever. It should become part of us and really change the state of whom we are. And Im Yirtzeh Hashem, as more and more Jews are interested and introduced to the beauty of what Torah has to offer, we can once again, as a nation, carry that name, Mamleches Kohanim v'Goy Kodesh. Yirtzeh Hashem, you should all be matzliach, and know Torah, and live it, and enjoy every minute of it, and become big and great. Tzlach Harab.